As I've mentioned before, these videos are about my preparations to do the Australian Alpine walking track in 2020. This is something I've wanted to do for a number of years. I'm not getting any younger, so it's time to really knock this thing off. I have to make sure that I'm still fit enough, so these trips are important. Also means I can make sure I've got the right equipment, and importantly for this trip I had a brand new tent. Finances are important, and that's something I can hope to deal with next year. But for the moment, over Easter, I decided, damn it, the weather was going to be great. I had a few days where I could spare, so let's head off for 6 days and head up in the mountains. Because I don't have a vehicle, I have to get public transport, so I get a bus which takes me to the train station, then another train into the city, get on a Vline train that takes me to Wangaratta, and then I get another bus that takes me to Bright. My plans for this hike were pretty simple. Wanted to get dropped off near Mount Hotham Airport, hike down around the airport and down into Kabunga River, and then up the other side and head over to Falls Creek. But as you'll see, things didn't quite go to plan. I must say, however, it was awesome heading out bush again. This was my first hike since the end of 2016. For reasons I still don't understand, I got to the end of 2017 and went, damn it, I didn't slot in a bushwalk anywhere. So, a bit frustrating. But like I said, it was awesome to be out there again. This is the area where I used to live. I lived up there for about 30 years, so this is really my backyard. And then all too soon in the afternoon, I was dropped off in Bright. Had to wait a couple of hours for another bus to pick me up, which would drop me off down the other side of Mount Hotham. Alright, so here I am. I've just been dropped off at the intersection of Mount Hotham Airport. And I'm gonna hike down here and then down near the airport, and I've got to go round the airport and then down into the Kabunga River. So I'll tell you, the weather's absolutely beautiful at the moment. It's just it's about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, so I've still got like 4 hours of daylight ahead of me, and I'm going to see what the track's like. Alright, so what's happened is I'm walking back out to the Great Alpine Road. It might sound a bit silly, but I couldn't find a way around the airport. There's it's all private property and marked as, no shooting, no trespassing. And some people might not care about the trespass laws, but I used to work on farms and we used to get sick of people walking through the farm over the private property that we're working on. So I do respect those signs. There's possibly a way I could have got around, but it's just a complete maze of electric fences and who knows what. And I've been up since 5 o'clock, so my sort of run out of don't give a fuck factor. And so I sort of decided that this warrants a bit more research and conversation with maybe parks or someone, and maybe in the future I'll come back and have another crack at this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bail back out to the Great Alpine Road, see if I can get picked up by someone and take me back to JB Plain, which is between Dinner Plain and Mount Hotham, and then so that way I can camp there the night. And that's proper, that's approved, that's approved camping site, so I can camp there the night, have a good night's sleep, and then tomorrow see if I can get a lift maybe to Mount Lock car park and sort of continue off. So still planning on being out for a few days, but this is a bit of a wrinkle, and I was expecting to be able to get out down that way, but yeah, like I say, it's all marked as private property, no trespassing, and I'm going to respect that. So anyway, the trick now is see if there's traffic going towards Mount Hotham, and hopefully someone will pick me up and drop me at JB Plain. I'm just making my way to JB Plain, which is about 6 kilometres away. Okay, So, first night in my new WE second arrow tent, and overall it's pretty good. I mean, obviously it works. Anyway, I've decided that what I'm going to do today is I'm starting to pack up, but I don't have far to go. I'm going to go to JB park area, and I'm going to camp up there tonight. So today's going to be a really easy day. I've only got about probably about 6 kilometres to hike, so that's really nothing. I mean, I did just under 10 kilometres yesterday, and so I've just arrived at dinner plane, and it's about 11:30. Luckily I've been able to replenish my water. Handy, I brought a bit extra cash with me, otherwise that might have been an issue. But as I couldn't get around the airport and get down over to McNamara's hut, I've decided to just come up this way. I camped just on the side of the road, or just off the road yesterday, and now I'm just going to cruise off to JB Plain, which is only about 2 kilometres away. I might do a day hike over to Mount Tabletop, which I'm not sure how far. It's not very far. I've done it as a day trip before, but it'd be over a decade since I've been there, so that'd be pretty cool. The weather's absolutely cracking, so it's good to finally be on an actual track. This is actually one of the snow trails that cross-country skiers ski on during winter. Back down here is Dinner Plain, and I'm heading to JB Plain. The actual track continues on, and then it actually goes under the road, and it goes up, and it taps out near the general store at Mount Hotham. So, but during summer, it's a really good track to walk on, and it'd be awesome to ride on. I think it'd be a great riding track as well. So, I might have to come up here one day and bring the bike, I think. Not long after I arrived at JB Plain, there was a few other campers there, which wasn't a surprise. Easter's a very busy time up in the mountains, but I found a specky spot nestled amongst the snow gums with a fairly cracking view. And finally my new tent was where it's meant to be, actually out in the real bush. And as it was so early and the weather was so just absolutely wonderful, I decided, damn it, I'm going to head out for a nice little day hike out to Mount Tabletop. I mean, this sort of weather is, and this environment and heading out there, it's just awesome to be out bush. This is what I love about bushwalking, and it's also why I'm really looking forward to doing the Australian Alpine Walking Track in 2020, because I'll be spending weeks out in the bush in areas like this. Sure, there'll be valleys, deep valleys, there'll be mountains, there's going to be plains, there's going to be just so many different things. But it was great. A little while later, I'm not exactly sure how long it took me, but I arrived at Mount Tabletop, and there's a nice lookout. Alright, so I've just done a day walk out from camp. I've got my camp set up at JB Plain, and I decided to come for a day walk out to Mount Tabletop. I haven't been here for probably, I reckon, the better part of a decade. I reckon it's probably 2005, 2006 since I've been here. And I did drive through here when I was in my van 2010, 2011, but we just stopped at JB Plain. So actually I haven't been here for a number of years, and I've got to tell you, the view is absolutely spectacular. This is pretty good. It's about 3.5 k's walk from JB Plain to here, so about 7k round trip. But I'm just going to chill here for a little while and then wander back, and looking forward to having something for dinner. I'm getting a bit hungry, so But yes, this is just another awesome spot, and this is another one of those spots that you just can't get to any other way apart from you know, walking out. And we need to have spots like this. I mean, sure, there's great places you can drive to and things like that, but we've got to have spaces reserved for people that are actually happy to walk out. And when you walk out, you sort of enjoy this view all the much more. I mean, this is just unbelievable. It's very, very specky. So I'm going to sit down and chill out for a bit, and then I'll wander back to camp. So I'm just making my way back from Mount Tabletop, and that's just over there, the lookout and everything. It's about 100 metres away. Beautiful, beautiful part of the world. So I've got about 3.6, 3.7. You know, when I download the track log, it may even be closer to 4K each way. I'm not sure. We'll see. But I've got to tell you, the weather, like the last 2 days, I mean, this is as good a bushwalking weather as you ever get. Sunny, bit of cool breeze, not hot, and just absolutely cracking. It's meant to be like this for the next few days, so I'm gonna head back to camp, and here's my track. So I've just had a bit of an injury. I walked into a bloody stick that was sticking out, and I've injured myself a bit of, spilled a bit of claret. So I'm going to head back to camp. It's about a kilometre away. Stupidly, I've left my first aid kit back there, which I really kicked myself over, and it just shows that you can get injured anytime. So I'm going to have a drink and then continue on. Yeah, whoa, this thing bloody hurts. I mean, that was close. I could have lost an eye, so damn close. Anyway, thankfully I got back to camp without too many issues and was able to treat myself with my first aid kit. Then I enjoyed cooking up some spud and onion things, which I featured on episode 8 of Weekly Catch Up Out and About with Trev, and the links below. Then the sun set, and I decided I wanted to go and check out JB Plain Hut. And I had a really good night's sleep, I've got to say. My second night's sleep was a bit better than my first. And we had a bit of a sunrise, and I got this shot, which I think was absolutely specky. I had to be up reasonably early and get packed up, and couldn't really muck around because the bus was going to pick me up, and I didn't want to miss it because being Friday, there wouldn't be another bus until Monday, and I didn't want to be stuck here for 2 days. There wasn't a lot of water around. I'd had to carry my water in. I'd reloaded at dinner plane. All right, so it's, what is it? It's 8:06. It's now day 3. So this is Mount Lock car park, and just over here is Mount Lock, and where I'm going to head is, this is day 3, and I've already done 28.5 kilometres at this point. This is the intersection of where the track that comes up from Dibbon Hut and then via Derrick Hut, and this is where I'll be coming out early Monday morning. But I'm now I'm going to head up here, and I'm going to go to Mount Lock, and then I'm going to go down Machinery Spur, and I'm going to Blair's Hut. So says I got 9.5 k's, and it's only just 11 o'clock, so I've got all afternoon basically to do 9.5 k's, so I could absolutely dawdle and I'll still make it without a problem. So the weather's absolutely perfect, it's spectacular. So yeah, all right, time to head up the track. Okay, so right now I'm on the top of Machinery Spur. Back up the track and behind me is Mount Lock. Down in here is the West Kiwa River, and down in here is the track, the road, well, the continuation of this that I'll end up on. So that sort of gives you an idea of where I'm off to. As you can see, the weather's absolutely cracking. I've said that a number of times already, but I got to tell you, you just don't get weather like this up here. So I'm now making my way down Machinery Spur. I've just left Red Robin Mine just up behind me, and it's great that there's now a little shelter. And it's interesting that the last time I was right here, it was actually pouring rain, and at that point I didn't have a waterproof camera, so I didn't get to take any photos coming down here. In fact, you couldn't really see anything anyway. The fog was just low down between the trees. The track was completely wet, and it was, like I say, it was just pouring rain. Lots of thunder right above me, and so I did get, I did sort of get a couple of shots, but my old camera wasn't waterproof, like I said. On that day, I absolutely cracked along here. I got dropped off at Mount Lock car park at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I cruised down here, and I must have had the foot down because I actually arrived at Blair Hut at 6 o'clock, so I've done 14 k's in 3 hours. Today I'm running a little bit slower schedule than that, or a bit more easy schedule, or a bit more laid back, I suppose. Enjoying the just awesome weather. But it's also interesting that particular trip, 2 days later, when I arrived at Dibbon Hut, I actually, on that trip, I came down here, and then what I did was, the next day I went up through Weston's hut to Twonga Huts, camped up there, and then I come down, I actually went out to Young Hut, and then I went down, followed the track down to Kabungra Gap, and then got to Dibbon Hut. And this is interesting, there's a run of photos. There's this photo of me arriving, and then the next one, there's a bit of blurriness in the lens, and then the next photo, this is the last photo, the camera is basically saying, what are you doing? At that point, one of the buttons stopped working. It's actually the recall button, so that you can have a look at photos. I did use it on a few more hikes, but interestingly, and I love how sometimes just things fall into place. The following day, a guy and 2 girls turned up, and they're standing out in the rain taking photos, and I'm like, oh yeah, I said, your camera better be waterproof. And both of them were like, they are. And I was like, well, you better let me have a look at them. So that sort of led me to ultimately getting my Canon AW100, and that was the camera that I used for my 2015 snow hike, and got some awesome shots with it, like just really wrapped. But then unfortunately that thing fell out of my pocket at Victoria Park Station, dropped down about 10 metres on the concrete, and hasn't been the same. It just, yeah, broken. I contacted Nikon with the error that's coming up, and they said basically buy a new one. So, all right, so this gives you a pretty good example of how far I've dropped. So track continues on up here and around, and right up there you can see there's a saddle, and right up there is where I was actually only, I don't know, hour and a half ago. So I remember I had quite a bit of break at Red Robin Mine, but so I've come from up there, so I've dropped a long way. Still looks like I've got a little bit to go though. So now the scenery's changed completely. I've now dropped down and I'm into these, some of the stands of mountain ash. Sort of, I'm not sure of the altitude. Hang on, let me just check. I reckon, just before I look at the GPS, I reckon we're at about 1300. And get around. Oh, there we go. I don't know if you can see that. There we go. $13.25. How's that for a good estimate? So I'm almost down the bottom of the valley now. Haven't got too much further to go. And yes, I'm having trouble getting my GPS back into its holder. I'll tell you, I'm looking forward to getting to Blair's hut. It's just now 3 o'clock, which is interesting because back in the early 2016, it was exactly this time that I was dropped off at Mount Lock car park. So that's just an interesting thing. I much prefer the start time this morning. I started at 10 o'clock. I've had a few breaks and stops, and I spent about an hour on top of Mount Lock, nearly an hour at Red Robin Mine just chilling. But now I'm pretty much just looking forward to get down to the hut, set up camp and have a cuppa. It's yeah. So I don't know how many Ks I've done today, but quite a few. Probably up to about 12 Ks a day, so it's not too bad. Alright, so I'm just about packed up, and I won't be heading off too quick. I've got a watch somewhere. Oh yeah. The important thing when you're out bush like this is respect the campsite you're at, and always make sure that you pick up all your rubbish. Unfortunately, we get some people that don't. Today's mission is to go from here at Blair's, head up over Kabungra Gap, and then down to Dibbon Hut, which is a beautiful part of the world. I've been there heaps and heaps of times. I just love it every time I get there. So I'm going to head off probably in another, probably honestly about another hour, and then I'll cruise up. This is an interesting spot. Back in 2005, mate and I, we did a snow hike from Mount Hotham down past Derrick Hut to Dibbon's Hut. We arrived at Dibbon's Hut about 2 hours after dark. We had to do the last 2 hours in the dark, and it was one of the toughest days hiking I've ever done. And it'll be in my top 5 toughest days hiking. We ended up having to stay at Dibbon's Hut for 2 nights. We just had to dry out some of the gear and warm up and wait till the weather cleared up slightly. And then we decided to walk out here, and we continued down the West Kiwa, and way down there we ended up camping on the side of the road. A bit worried that someone might come through in the night and clear us up, or clean us up, but unfortunately, ironically what happened was the next morning we got up and we'd walked about half a K, and there was a gate. No one would have got to us anyway, so that was interesting. But what I can tell you was, you know, also after that we had to do a we had to cross the river, and that was pretty exciting. The water was about waist deep, and here's a shot of me wading through with my ice axe planted in the rocks, trying to get some stability. But even before that, when we left Dibbon Hut, we come up over Kabungra Gap, and we come down through here. This was fully snowed in. We actually got to this point here where the tree is. And I can tell you that, like, at the time I was like, just looked at it like, how the hell are we going to get around this thing? And we ended up going up, around through the bush, and then coming down in behind here. And at the time I marked it on my GPS and copied it to my map software, so even today I've got it in the GPS, and it's just interesting. It's good to see someone's come through and cut it. This is a beautiful Dibbon's Hut, and this is in the Kabungra Valley, and we've got Kabungra River cruising past. Today's the first day for the whole trip that I've actually seen some cloud, so the weather's just been absolutely cracking. We've had, I don't know, maybe would have been close on 50 people camping here last night. There was half a dozen just up from me. There was about another 20 or so down along the river. And we had quite a few of us around here near the hut, but it's they've all basically left. Many of them are going up all the way to Hotham, but I'm actually taking it a bit easy. I'm not leaving probably for at least another couple of hours. All I've got to do is make it up the hill, and I get to Derrick Hut, which is a very short run. But that means tomorrow morning I can be out and catch the bus. But I must say my new tent has performed amazing. I mean, it hasn't had any weather to deal with, but it's I'm getting used to setting it up, and it's a little bit different setup than my old tent. My sleeping bag died on day one. The zip's broken, so I'm going to have to go and buy a new sleeping bag. So that's a bit of a thing. So before my next trip, which is a planned snow trip across the Razorback, I'll have to get a new sleeping bag. So there's something that I'll have to budget for. But yeah, it's just nice here, and I'm actually enjoying the fact that I've basically got this place to myself for a little while. I wouldn't expect that's going to last for very long. I'd say that there might be some people come through even within the next hour, depending on where they're heading and things like that. This is basically the busiest time of the year for up here in the mountains. But it's absolutely a spectacular place, and absolutely love it. And as I've mentioned, all these things that I'm doing now, and new equipment like the tent, and I have to get a new sleeping bag, and all of the things I'm doing is basically gearing me up for the Australian Alpine walking track, which right now I'm sitting 100 metres from the walking track. And yesterday when I was up at Kabungra Gap, it was interesting, my thoughts there, because I'd come through up the West Kiwa and was just sitting, and it was interesting, and here's a little bit about how I was thinking yesterday when I was at Kabungra Gap. Oh. So this is an interesting spot. This is Kabungra Gap, and it sits, this intersection here, this is obviously where I've just come from. That goes down the West Kuwa and down towards Blair's Hut, then the bottom of Diamantina where a lot of people are going up today. This track here goes up to Basalt Temple and ends up going out onto the high plains and the snow poles, and you get into pole 333 and things like that. Basalt Temple's a quite interesting little place, and I think I first went there, it'd be quite a while, you know, back probably 20 years ago, but every time I go through it's a great place to stop. Where I'm going now is back down the track here, down to Dibbon Hut. But like I said, this is an interesting place, and for me, with my plans to do the Australian Alpine walking track in 2020, at some point when I do that, I will actually be coming through here, and I'm not sure what day I'll be on. I'll have to I'd have to check my schedule for that, but I'll be coming through here, and I think I'm pretty sure I've got planned to have a rest day at Dibbon Hut. It's a beautiful spot. So you've got river there, so plenty of water, have a wash, things like that. It's also good to just chill out for a bit. So it's going to be a bit of a totally different feeling. I mean, here I am today on day 4, and I've got 2 more days to go. Whereas when I'm here, I don't know, you know, there'll be another 40 days to go when I'm on the Australian Alps walking track. So I just thought it was just interesting. This little spot here is just going to be one of those places when I get to it, I'll be feeling totally different to where I am now. But now I'm just going to dive down to the hut and set up camp and chill out for the rest of the day. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to chill out. I might have a bit of a wash, and then in a while I'll wander up the hill. And as I'm speaking, I mentioned the people will be coming through. There's people coming through right now. So anyway, I'm just going to chill out. Alright, so I'm just making my way down. It's just on 8:30, so I've got about an hour to get basically to the car park, which is just there, so it's not going to take me that long. Behind me I've got Mount Hotham Resort, but if I spin around, there's the Razorback, and all the way over to Mount Feathertop, and that's what I'm planning to do as a snow trip in the sort of June or July when there's enough snow. I'd really like there to be about a metre of snow, even a metre and a half would be better, but it'll be interesting. And the great thing is that when you're on snow you can basically camp anywhere, so I've sort of had to put the foot down over the last 15 minutes or so just to try and get myself to a position where I knew I was going to make it to the car park. Like I say, it's only just up there, so it's not like it shouldn't take me too long. I'm just going to go down this track here a little bit, down there, and then up the other side. But if I miss this, if I was to miss this bus, there's not another bus for 2 days, so I certainly don't want that. Anyway, I'm going to continue on. I am so looking forward to a, I don't know, takeaway meal, or might go to the bakery in Bright when I get down there. I reckon that'd be, ooh, nice couple of nice hot sausage roll and a chocolate Big M. That sounds great. So, as it turns out, my trip isn't anywhere near, it's almost finished, but I'm, yeah, I'm out the front of Rutherford Station, and now I've got 1.5 kilometres to hike, but through the streets, so I should be home in about 20 minutes, 30 minutes. I've done this a lot, but it's a bit extra. Because the buses run out at 9:30 at night, which is really bad. I think the buses should run later. They should go until about midnight. So, but anyway, time to head home, and then my trip will be finally over. I don't want it to click over to day 7. So this is the end of day 6, and I should be home shortly.